Hi guys, how are you doing? So nice to see you all. Uh, I've done some work in the early morning and wanted to take a coffee break and share it with you. As always, enjoying my Cafe Bustelo, best, most affordable, all black. It's a legal drug, right? And it's one that we can have with abandon. So we might as well enjoy it. Turkey Vulture, welcome. I'm gonna do a little bit of an unboxing today, and I have my box right here. Um, but I guess I will also talk a little bit about Seiko divers and what I like about them, um, why I wear them, why I love them so much, to the point that I have to have not one, not two, but three of them. Um, and then just do the unboxing. Um, I know some of you are familiar with the story. I have a Rolex Submariner that I've inherited from my father, but uh, of course, since he passed away so early on, I learned about him mostly through my mom and through some of his friends. And I was surprised to discover um, that he was more of an Omega guy than a Rolex guy. Once I started asking about it and asking about his connection to watches, which incidentally included a lot of Seiko pieces as well, mostly quartz and exclusively dress pieces. JB, welcome to the channel. It's so nice to see you here. And when I started my watch collection, I decided to mostly focus on Rolex pieces, and I really do wear them to bits. I wear them on on a daily basis, in a very simple rotation. Some of them at a certain point might be tucked away in some deposit box, but for the most part, they all appear at one time or another. And I do just about everything with them, except of course, I don't like taking them to beach or to pool, to an actual swim, and I don't necessarily like wearing them in the gym. Um, and of course, some of it is security uh, related, right? You don't necessarily want to be in a place where you take your watch off momentarily, and the minute you turn back, it somehow has disappeared, or you don't want to have to take your watch off before you step into the pool or before you jump into the ocean because you haven't had the gaskets checked um, recently, and you don't know if your watch is actually waterproof and perfectly sealed or not. You don't want to run those kinds of risks with a vintage watch, right? I have previously taken some of my watches to the gym. I have previously swam with some of my vintage watches, but I don't really use them with that sort of reckless abandon on a regular basis, right? You want to enjoy life, you want to enjoy your watches, you want to have them as part of your life, but that doesn't mean you should expose them to these sorts of dangers without even thinking twice. Tim Wright, I love you too, man. Nice to see you. So that's when I started getting more and more interested in Seikos, and I know that they've always had their own heritage, related or unrelated to the whole quartz crisis debacle, that they have had their own series of divers since mid 1960s. And I've always enjoyed that particular aesthetic, especially when it comes to their more unique case shapes. Um, and the funny thing is, I always considered them and felt that they were wonderful pieces of design, right? They might seem on paper perhaps too big. You know, the case diameters might say 43, 45, even 47 when it comes to some of their modern divers in the Grand Seiko range. But they just sit so comfortably and so well on the wrist that it doesn't even show. And you know what I'm wearing today, my SKX 007, which I put on a gray NATO strap that has, I think, through its infusion of the chlorine, taken this drab green color by now, which kind of fits well with the color scheme of this watch. And I know some people don't necessarily care about this, and they really shouldn't, but I get a little obsessed about having the made in Japan um, writing on the dial, since this is a Japanese watch, right? And there are a lot of little quirky details that I really enjoy about the SKX series. Very vintage feel in a certain sense. The aluminum bezel insert is, of course, part of that, but more so the fact that the loom plots are not surrounded by anything, just put directly on the dial, which gives it that sort of authentic vintage diver feel. I always enjoyed the kind of action that the bezel gives you. Again, a little perhaps fidgety and a little childish, but you know, it's just a watch that you can enjoy without really thinking twice about it. Big Meech is here. Joe Farmer, nice to see you, man. Mr. Skydweller, welcome to the channel. Jay Gray, lovely to see you. And of course, the orange writing, right, which of course really fits with the diver / nautical theme, and again kind of reinforces that idea that this watch belongs or used to belong to another time. Of course, it's not a perfect watch. It's very much an entry-level watch, and I know you know, it comes on this rubber strap, which wears actually quite nicely, but it does feel, as much as I like rubber bands, it does feel a little cheap, right? You know, even the steel buckle, the way it's finished with this brushed finish. It feels cheap. It looks plasticky. It just doesn't feel right. You know, even at the price point, I felt it wears a little better, and I get more enjoyment out of it when I wear it with a NATO strap. Brent, hey, nice to see you, man. So I almost immediately took it off when I saw it. Another quirky thing that I really like about it is the day date function, of course, which again, you know, for a Rolex fanboy, of course, feels entirely out of place on an entry level diver, but because it's so wrong, it's somehow right. Of course, you have the bilingual day there, which is a very nice touch, and the Japanese domestic market SKXs, of course, at least used to have the Arabic day names in conjunction with the English one. So that's a very cool little thing there, because it's not very often that you see Arabic writing on the face of a watch. So that's an interesting touch. Otherwise, of course, the crown at 4 o'clock is to me very definitive of Seiko divers, even though they're not the only brand that has that. And as much as I enjoy it aesthetically, again, the reason I take this watch to the gym is if I'm working on something, it doesn't really push, it doesn't really dig into my hand, dig into my wrist bone. There, it is actually a thoughtful piece of design. Again, it might look very quirky and somewhat irrelevant at first blush, but they are actually useful. Diego is here. Buenos dias, senor. So, Danny, my man, how are you? SKX013 Turkey Vulture. I think it's just too small. It's too small for the kind of watch it is. I know some people again think that on paper these watches look like they're really large. But you have to go with the feel of the watch. It's a sports watch. It's a diver. It's supposed to wear a little bigger. It's supposed to have a dial that's more visible. And honestly, I think at the SKX range, which is mostly unavailable now, it's supposed to be that size. And again, you have to know what you're getting, and you have to know what to expect from the watch. When I got these, they were still selling, even for the made in Japan or Japanese domestic market model, right under $200. And for the kind of enjoyment, for the kind of utility, for the kind of experience they bring into a more casual, relaxed, and reckless environment, I think it was well worth the money. And I was one of the people who was very, very disappointed that they were mostly gone and discontinued and mostly replaced by Seiko 5 at that price point, at least. So I have also the SKX 009, which again has a different color scheme, has the so-called Pepsi bezel and a blue dial. And that watch, of course, has been famously featured in the very, very interesting and very well conceived movie All Is Lost. I'm always a huge fan of minimalist cinema and the kind of theatricality that brings into filmmaking. So I really enjoyed that movie, and I was very happy to find out that diver was featured in that movie. So without further ado, I was thinking of adding another Seiko to my collection, and somehow, again, as much as I appreciate the Seiko 5s and the kind of accessibility they bring into the market, I was looking for something that was more so in the range of my older JDM SKXs, but perhaps a little bit different, one step up. And I think the Seiko Prospex range offers great value when it comes to that particular segment of a watch. In the secondary market, they can be found more or less at the same price point as what those SKXs sell nowadays. I snagged this on the secondary market, and it was around $325 when all was said and done. Of course, as you can see here, the actual price tag is $595, which again might seem a little salty, but you really don't have to buy these sorts of watches. And if you ask me, any watch at the actual price point, and you don't necessarily have to get them new. But I know some people like that particular feeling, and I'm not going to judge or insist, but there's a reason that we have been so interested and invested in vintage watches, and one reason always was, even though that seems to be changing on a daily basis, was that they offered great value. So here's the outer box after we get rid of the sleeve. It's a little bit, it is what it is. It's a Seiko box. It's a little more sturdy. It has a little more structure than the one that comes with the SKXs. And there is our watch. And I went with SRPE05 again because I just wanted a no-nonsense sports watch on a rubber strap. I really do love wearing watches on the rubber strap. That's why I have a Tropic rubber band for my Submariner, which I bring out once every so often. And I chose this particular model especially because it was also a different color and a different dial design, and that was very attractive to me. The so-called waffle texture on the dial, and the green color scheme was really interesting to me. We have that booklet, we have the Prospex tag, and the warranty business. So again, not that I'm wedded to the idea of getting a full set, but when you are in the secondary market and you can find something like this, it's why not pick it up if it's offered at the right price point. Right, let's bring out this maybe nice little pillow there. Again, nothing too fancy, but a little better than what came with SKXs. This rubber band, of course, I feel is much more pliant. It just feels and wears so much better than the version that's provided with the SKXs, which is a little more stiff. Of course, it opens up as you wear it, but still the feel is very different. The grain on the back here is a lot better, and therefore the rubber band feels so much nicer against your wrist. Of course, the hardware, while still having a brushed finish, it's just done at a better level, and of course the keeper here is also brushed stained steel with Seiko emblazoned right across it, which is a nice touch again. So it has all the same attributes as the SKXs, but at a slightly higher level, right? We have that Seiko wave on the case back, which is, of course, kind of taken or inspired by that famous piece, The Great Wave of Kanagawa by Hokusai. We have a case that's much more sleek and much more multidimensional, I should say, right? Because it has this brushed finish on top, but it's polished on the sides, and the bezel itself replicates that waffle design on the dial, and is also brushed and finished. So visually, this piece has a lot more complexity. It's designed better, so even though it is slightly slightly larger compared to the SKX, you'll see that it wears almost as well, right? It has, I think, more or less the same contours as the SKX, but since it's much more slimmer, right? Even with larger case dimensions, it wears more snugly, more snug, I should say, and just has a more comfortable fit. Of course, this cushion-shaped turtle case is mostly famous for its ergonomics. It is one of their main designs in the divers range, in addition to the samurai and sumo. And again, I appreciate it because it is unique, because it is so Seiko. But I also love it in addition to those aesthetics for the ergonomic benefits of it, the way it sits on your wrist, the way with the location of the crown, the way it doesn't actually dig into your hand or your wrist bone. And this particular piece, of course, preserves all those elements of the SKX range, and at a slightly higher point, brings so much extra value onto the table. I've mentioned that it's a more multi-dimensional piece, right, because of the different finishes, and perhaps as a nod to the Seiko modding community, right out of the pack, this comes with a sapphire crystal instead of the Seiko proprietary hard legs, and it comes with a ceramic bezel insert, which I think is, again, a nice touch. And it does go along with other details on the dial, of course, the waffle design, waffle pattern, which Oshin, as you know, has called grenade, and I think it does really fit the feel of this watch. But you'll also see that, unlike the SKX, here the loom plots are surrounded, and we have also a gold accented seconds hand that is matched by the writing on the dial as well. So similar ideas, a slightly more, I wanted to say luxurious, but maybe slightly more quality execution. And you have a watch that has everything that is good about the SKX, everything that is good about a budget diver from Seiko, but at a slightly more elevated level. And you can get one without losing your shirt, and certainly use it, wear it, and enjoy it anywhere without having to think twice about it. Let's see, who wins, Fury versus Usyk? Let's see if they will get through their next opponents first. We have Fury versus Dillian White coming up very soon, and the rematch for Usyk versus Joshua is going to be rescheduled very soon, since Usyk has gotten the permit to get out of Ukraine. So we'll see. Not to imply anything, I do favor Fury to beat White, and I do favor Usyk to win the rematch as well against Anthony Joshua. But still, it's too early to talk about the Fury-Usyk fight. Steel stunners. Yes, Big Meech. No matter what, whether it's Rolex or not, we always first tend to go for stainless steel sports. Jay Gray, almost not worth betting. Well, not worth betting on Fury with those odds for sure, but I'm sure Dillian White could make you a lot of money, and it's always the underdog that makes the money, right? You know, if you just go with whatever the bookies are predicting, obviously you're not going to make much. And my advice is always not to bet, because at the end of the day, it's the house that wins. Yes, I think the short lug to lug, which is again part of the design of this watch, part of the cushion case execution, part of the turtle case shape, I think it's just great. Look, I mean, you can kind of see here, right? I'm basically on the second to last hole, right? So I do have a pretty dainty wrist, and you can also see how much extra I have, right? But it doesn't look comically large on my wrist, does it? For a 45 millimeter diver, it really doesn't look like it's too big for me. So that's one of the reasons why I appreciate Seiko's. You know, when I tried their Grand Seiko diver, I don't even remember the model number at this point, but it was a limited edition boutique exclusive. It also had the waffle dial, but it was blue. That had on paper 47 millimeter for the case diameter, and it wore well. It wore well, and all that is due to thoughtful design, right? I don't necessarily blame brands like Rolex or Omega for not bending some of those rules, you know, because they do have really iconic designs in models like the Submariner, like the Speedmaster. Um, you don't really have much wiggle room when it comes to that. But when you're Seiko, when you're out there to provide value, provide utility, uh, I think you have more room to come up with designs that actually are ergonomically right, beneficial, and perhaps more useful, and you have more um, agility, so to speak, in having the free reign to update and modify these designs as you go along, while still staying true to your own heritage and to your own design language, to your own um, know-how and place in the horological market. And I don't think that will change anytime soon. I know we have our skepticism against Grand Seiko. uh, I know maybe right at the entry point, you don't find a lot of value in Seikos, but I think increasingly at the Prospex range, uh, every year they have at least one watch that's worth at least a second look, and that can find a place in your collection. Um, and in fact, yes, I keep saying this. If I didn't have any watches, and if I wanted to get a one and done watch, I would just go for the Tudor Pelagos. But I can easily think another scenario where I probably end up getting a Seiko Prospex diver, and I would still get something at that mid-level, very useful, very rugged, uh, unique and true to its own heritage, and beautiful looking watches. Let's see if I can find the one that I really enjoyed in that range. I'll just pull up the Prospex line before I close. Let's see. Hmm. There we are. Yeah, right. In another scenario, I can see myself getting something like this. Right? Um, why should one not look at something like this if you are just looking for a one and done, something for a younger person, younger man, that can be used in a number of different ways. And again, it can straddle most occasions, considering how casual people are dressing these days. uh, you can practically wear it everywhere. I wouldn't wear something like this to work necessarily. Certainly not to a black tie event, right? Unless you are actually 007, um, or unless you're oozing with that sort of old school movie star charisma. This is gonna look off. But anyway, this something like this is a great value, I think, and I know they don't necessarily come with the best, highest quality steel bracelets, but I feel like they're meant to be worn on canvas straps, on rubber, anyways. And the aftermarket is so huge these days. But I feel like with the Uncle Seiko bracelets, um, that you can get something quite nice, um, for around $100, if I'm not mistaken, that will satisfy your need for a stainless steel bracelet that fits with these watches. And I know this one also comes um, with a cushion-shaped case as well. There we go. The Captain Willard design, which is again more unique to Seiko, and the dial has this grainy finish as well. More of a vintage feel perhaps in this one, um, but very recognizably Seiko, and if you ask me, quite beautiful. And even though the list price is 1,300, in the previous model, which was SPB 239, it was 1,200, right? SPB 237, the Captain Willard design, it's 1,300. And in both cases, I'm sure you can get a handy discount at your local Seiko AD. So why not consider something like this? I do appreciate the no crown guards look too. Again, one of those elements uh, of a vintage diver that is somehow preserved here without making it look out of place or comical. Again, it's just what thoughtful design and an established design language um, gives you. Brand says, I have 3 different colorways of the King Samurai and love them. Right, so I basically have 3 different iterations of a cushion-shaped Seiko diver, and I love them all, and they all have a very different feel. And without even thinking about different strap combinations, you have an entire 3-piece collection there, right? For someone who loves diver watches, and it's very basic, I know, but they just have such a useful place in that whole sports watch range, with just by being waterproof, right? It's hard not to be attracted to divers watches as sports watches. Brent agrees that the short lug to lug helps with the wear and feel of the watch. Sky Dweller. Thank you for the kind words. What do I think of Breguet Marine Horamundi 5557? Let's see. I don't think I have actually handled this watch. You would know that I do really love this series. Um, and I have had the chance to try on both in the Breguet boutique and also last weekend in San Francisco at the Tourbillon store, which is kind of like a Swatch Group affair. I could also try on the chronograph and the alarm function watch as well. This one I haven't seen up close. This one I haven't handled. Um, but again, I love the fact that this is a take on a very popular function, namely the world time, but in a way that belongs to that line, and that's very recognizably Breguet. It's not trying to be something else. And trust me, that guilloche wave dial design is really something to behold in person. It's really something unique and something that cannot be easily replicated or seen in another brand. Of course, having the entire world map there, even though it's not necessarily a very unique piece of design, it's still quite great, right? You can see all these contours uh, that are traced in a lighter shade of blue, so it fits with the larger theme of the watch. You see the day-night indicator, which again is beautiful. The city that's showing with the anchor, again a little bit overplayed, right? They really went a little far with the nautical elements of this watch. The propeller design around the crown, um, the name, of course, the um, ship's wheel rotor in the actual movement, the ship's wheel rotor for the uh, clasp of the déployant. And I've actually looked at the presentation um, box. Jay Gray asks if it's a moon phase. I think, again, I haven't seen this watch in person, but as far as I can tell, I think that's just a day-night indicator, sun and moon, so to speak. But I won't speak too quickly because, again, I haven't seen this watch um, in person. But yeah, I really do like them, and these watches too can be gotten at quite a deal in the secondary market, and they can. I'm sure the dealers would be happy to work out a deal with you as well and give you a hefty discount. Speaking of that nautical angle, I have I have actually specifically asked to see the presentation box at the Tourbillon boutique in San Francisco, and that one also looks like a yacht inside. It's really something to behold. I'll see if I can find a picture of it for a later presentation. But they really went all the way with that nautical theme, and I'm not sure if it makes it more desirable or slightly over the top at that point. But it's really all right. Junior Johnson, hello from Michigan. Nice to see you, my man. Yes, Sky Dweller. I was at Tourbillon Boutique. Of course, they had a whole selection, maybe the entire range of Blancpain as well. And I tried both the 50 fathoms and the 500 fathoms. And again, as large as they are in case diameter, they wear quite nicely, and they sit well on the wrist. I still thought that they were, unlike the Seikos, I still thought they were too big for me. But I'm happy to do a video on them too, maybe at a later date, and in another presentation, we'll take a look at the range of Blancpain divers. I didn't plan this particular presentation to go for more than 30 minutes. We are already almost by 45. So I will conclude by once again saying that I am very grateful for your support. I'm really grateful for your presence. Thank you so much for participating from the chat, giving me some directions, asking questions. It really makes this whole thing worth it. The interaction, the back and forth. It's really the best part of being on YouTube. With that being said, you still have about 3 more days in March, and I really encourage you to send me an email with your questions and requests for new videos. I have a lot of stuff coming up for tomorrow. You can check them out if you would like, and they're already listed on my channel. But please feel free to send me your own questions, maybe for some guidance on your next purchase. Maybe just a request for me to look into a particular brand or a particular range or a particular model of the watch with its history, with its heritage, with its provenance, but also with its particular situation in the market today. And of course, if you want me to review your collection on a live stream, ideally in a format that includes you, I would really love to do that too. Those are quickly becoming the signature of this channel, and I think they're great occasions for us to learn more about all these different characters in the Archieverse. Talk watches, of course, but really peek a little more, peek a little deeper into the character of all these wonderful people who populate this little corner of the internet that we have and that we really cherish and that we are trying to expand. Still, of course, with all that, if you're feeling generous, if you want me to build up the studio and generate more content when I can go out and film, feel free to send me a donation on PayPal, which is connected to the same email address, and that is lordhellespontv@gmail.com. I really appreciate you all. I'll see you later today, hopefully in Archie's live stream. But if I don't, I'll most certainly see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.